components are being added to what you're doing, you are assessing the risk that's associated with that and making a decision. So to give you some specific examples, it's about like your gear. Is it gear that you've jumped before? Do you know how to fly it? Is it something that you're familiar with? Do you know that it's appropriate for the jump that you're doing? The groups that you're jumping with, do you know those people? Do you know their level? Do you know their sort of style and preference for exiting and landing and whatnot? The aircraft, have you jumped that aircraft before? Do you know where the restraints are, how to put yours on, how to take it off? What are the light systems? What's the, you know, the preference of anything that's specific to the aircraft? Opening the door, is there a clip? Isn't there a clip? That sort of thing. The drop zone, have you jumped there before? What are the local rules? What are the habits, basically, of the Hamish of the drop zone? You know, there are specific things about how they give the calls, where they prefer you to be in planing, when they want you to be out there, where are the no-go areas, what are the habitude is the word I keep thinking of. I don't know what the right one is, but you know, like where are the preferences of people landing and things like that. Not just the specific, here's the drop zone rules, X, Y, Z, but what's the custom of that drop zone as well. The coaches, have you jumped with them before? You know, what are their preferences and things that they do? You know, are they the people who go super flat and fast on their angles? Are they the ones who do a lot of vertical jumps? Do they, you know, swoop, and so will want your group to go early so that they can get down fast and swoop? And also, like what are the skills that you have, and are you at the boogie working within your skill level, or are you pushing yourself? So with all of those factors, what you want to be doing is making sure that you aren't adding a lot of unknown variables to each jump. So if you're at a new drop zone and you haven't jumped there before, with a group that you haven't jumped with a coach that you haven't jumped with an aircraft, you know, you're starting to now add in all of the things. So my advice would be remove some of the unknown variables. Do a jump in a smaller group. You know, do something that you know how to do for the first jump at the boogie, and sort of build up from there. Does anyone have any questions about that? I think that's kind of obvious for all of us, but you know, like the temptation to show up at a boogie and be like, okay, I'm going to do 40 jumps here. It's a good idea for me to jump on this new canopy. Resist that temptation if you can.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of showing up a day early to skydiving events, and it's becoming, I think, more and more of a thing. If the drop zone are open to it and you've got the extra time, it's really great to go to a new drop zone and get a jump or two done before the event starts. It's a lot less pressure when you're doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, that's practical sometimes it isn't. So if it isn't, just be making the decision based on, okay, this is my first jump here. I am on a new rig for whatever reason. Maybe I'm not going to do a 15-way angle with some crazy people I've never met. The main thing in all skydiving on how to keep safe is information. So get the information about the groups, the coaches, the aircraft, the drop zone, and don't be afraid to ask a question if you have one. And if you aren't getting a satisfactory answer, as in the information that you're getting isn't mitigating that risk for you, then be comfortable saying no, pulling yourself off the jump, or suggesting that something easier is done. When you're jumping with load organisers, making sure that your group is together and available for briefing. Quite often they'll need to be running around two different groups, you know, briefing, packing, peeing, and it's much easier if you guys are all together and can all be briefed together. Resist the temptation where it's going to create a bit of confusion jumping on groups at the last minute. So even if you have the skill level and you show up at the plane and there's like a 6-way and you think, oh, fantastic, I want to go with that group. Think about not only the impact to you as a flyer, but the other people in the group. Sometimes if they're a little bit lower experienced, then adding another person at the last minute can create a bit of confusion and a bit more pressure on those people, not just yourself. So be skydiving for the whole group rather than just for yourself. I know that at a boogie, this is going to sound silly, but like it happens. And in fact, Jules and I have done this ourselves. If you are so keen to get on the day tape, do a skit. Like, get with your mate, come up with a funny skit, make sure that your SD card is cleared of old footage, get it set in the setting that the editor wants it, get the footage early in the day and hand it to the editor, and you will make the day tape. If that's what you're concerned about at the boogie, you can make that happen. You don't need to go on a jump that you're not necessarily skilled for, that's bigger than what you're comfortable with, to try and end up on the day tape. You know, the camera flyers are putting the footage in. You guys can put it in too. If you want to be on there and show your mum, hey mum, look at what I did, get your mate to film it and hand it into them early in the day, and voila. Let me just check my notes. Oh,
that's perfect. Thank you for that. That's awesome. I couldn't have said it better.
No worries. The other thing that might blow some of your minds is the load organisers are sometimes looking to you for guidance. So don't think because someone has thousands of jumps and has done this that they know everything about your drop zone and are in the best position to make the calls on particularly prevalent weather and things like that. There are a lot of different rules around the world for different types of weather. So in America, you can jump when there are like dust devils in the air, like little mini tornadoes. And there are some drop zones where that happens all the time. So they jump all day through those. However, if a wisp of a cloud appears in the distance of the sky, they will stop jumping. So, you know, and yeah, like some places in Sweden, it's full 8/8 cloud and you're still allowed to track. So sometimes if the load organizer isn't a local, they will be looking to the people from that drop zone for a bit of an intimation or guidance as to whether or not we think that this is appropriate weather for this group to jump in, because sometimes what is their rules at their local drop zone or where they're licensed doesn't apply to where they are. So the idea that because other people are still jumping, it must be okay. Try and avoid sort of falling into that trap. Be making your own decision based on the weather that you see in front of you. And if you are getting that vibe of maybe ask a few more questions, maybe have a bit of a convo about it. And although, you know, boogie is like waking up on Christmas Day, it's the funnest thing. All of your friends are there. You know, it's this thing that you've probably been looking forward to for ages. Sometimes you do still need to make the decision that, okay, I maybe want to wait for an hour or two for this weather to go through or for whatever to happen. And that's for sure the hardest thing, particularly if you're already manifested on a load, particularly if you're jumping with a group that you've already been having heaps of fun with and like it's just been the best, to then say, do you know what? I want to have less fun. That's hard. But it's not really that you're having less fun. It's that you're avoiding a situation that would make everything way less fun. So that's probably the hardest thing to do, is once you're in the momentum of the event, making a decision to say, do you know what? I actually don't want to continue. So I guess have a think about how you would approach that if you were in that situation, so that you don't sort of feel peer pressured or feel like, oh, I don't want to miss out on this. You know, have a think about how you will be able to make that decision and execute it if the situation arises. I'm sure ask. Oh, yeah, I just want to, I know I sort of touched on it earlier with like the risk mitigation thing, but there is a big difference between a skills camp and a boogie. So if you're going to a boogie, sometimes it's not going to be like a big intensive briefing and, you know, really specific information on how you need to fly each slot and whatnot, and then a big debrief. So read the situation, and if for the jump that is being planned, you require more specific instruction, then perhaps it isn't the one to do at the boogie. The best jumps to do are the ones that are safe, where everyone can do what's, you know, being planned. The jumps that work out are the best ones. So sometimes at at the boogies, it's better to keep the skill level or skill expectation a bit lower so that the jump can be successful, because everyone feels really happy if the jump goes well. Whereas, you know, if there's a jump and it depends on everyone being in an exact slot at an exact time and it doesn't work out, sometimes that is a bit less fun. It is definitely less safe in some situations, but it also doesn't leave you with that fun feeling. Not everyone's high-fiving in the landing area like we want them to. So I always err on the side of making it easier so that everyone can be there, rather than sort of really trying to stretch the skill level, particularly when it's a new group and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's pretty much just looping back on the same themes: is inform yourself, make the decision for yourself. Think about, if this wasn't a boogie and this was just a weekend jumping, would I be so hardcore keen to do this? And I know that the fun of the boogie definitely like pushes us and, you know, maybe stretches us a little bit in some areas, which is totally fine because we all learn in that situation. So it is good to stretch yourself, and it is good to, you know, go beyond what is comfortable, but you just need to make sure that you're doing it in an informed way, and that it's not like, whoa, I didn't even think of that. It's like, yeah, okay, I knew that could happen and it happened. Okay. Cool. That's all that I have written down for my notes. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions. I was really looking forward to this myself because I, for one, suffer from anxiety when I go to a new drop zone. Even if I just go back to Skydive Auckland and I haven't been there for 8 months or something, that first jump, I'm sitting in the aircraft with the sweats, and I get a lot of comfort from knowing that I've got a plan, you know, that I have thought about this drop zone, and I might even have looked at it the night before on a map, so I'm really comfortable with the directions. You know, if somebody says to you where the wind is coming from at a new drop zone, are you going to know what direction that's from? And it's really worth taking some time to educate yourself. If these things don't come naturally to you, like they don't to me, I have to spend some time studying the different conditions about a drop zone so I can understand what people are saying to me, and know which direction is which. And it sounds basic, but I think many people turn up to drop zones without having considered that, especially the lower experienced skydivers.
Yeah, that's definitely really good advice, not just for boogies, but for all jumping. Don't at any point in your jumping career think, I don't need to know that. Any information that's being presented to you, welcome it. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it will click into place a little bit later, but definitely don't shut out information and think this isn't relevant to me. Even if you don't do that discipline of jumping at that exact moment, even if you're not planning on wingsuiting or whatever, if you're hearing information about that, there is nothing that I've ever learned in skydiving where I've thought that was not helpful. You know, at moments where you need it, the info comes back to you.
Sure.
Hey, Jill, thanks for your info. It's really great. I thought I'd just like to reiterate with your discussion on weather and choosing whether to jump or not. We attended the gyro boogie a couple of years ago in Auckland, and I remember Jill and myself were both LOing. Jill was free flying and I was canopy coaching, but the weather wasn't great to do any one-on-one canopy jump, so I was just on the ground videoing, and the winds were super strong. And now in Australia we have 25 knot wind limit. In Auckland or in New Zealand, there's no wind limit. So I think it was getting up beyond 25 knots. And I was actually asked to help out with the FS coaching and just take some of the green sort of A and B license jumpers, so that Sass and Gary Nemirovsky could take the more experienced guys. Anyway, as soon as the winds went over limits, like I actually didn't end up jumping. We were manifested for a load, and the winds went over 25 knots. And I just went, look, I'm not comfortable for myself to jump in that. But also, I'm thinking about the people who I'm jumping with, and they're certainly not ready. Now, a couple of the jumpers in my group who had like 100 or so jumps, they decided to go and manifest anyway and do their own thing. And I just quietly went up to them and said, you know, you do realize I've, you know, got about 11,000 skydives and I've decided not to jump. Just saying. Maybe you just want to watch a load or two and really see if you're ready for this. And I remember Jill actually was on a plane and heard that the winds had got up to 30 knots, and she decided to come back down and land in the plane. So really knowing yourself, and you know, look at the experienced jumpers as well, and think, well, if they're not jumping, why? Don't put pressure on yourself just because your mates are jumping, or you feel like you need to, like Jill said, because it's a boogie and I just want to get these jumps in. You know, there's know your limits.
For sure.
Yeah, it sucks to miss out on stuff. So when you make the call and then actually the weather turns out to be fine, you're like, damn it, why did I do that? But on that particular load that Jules is talking about, we were on the jump, or like we had the 1 minute call, and the message got passed down that it was gusting 29 knots. Yeah, my license goes up to 25, which was the first thing that popped into my head. I thought, insurance-wise, I wonder if I'm covered if I jump in this. And there was clear confusion down the aircraft about what to do. And to me, that was a very good indication that all these people on bigger canopies in front of me, I'm going to have to cross their line of flight to get down, and they are clearly confused. So I said to them, I am not getting out. I'm staying in the plane. And still people obviously, you know, can choose to get out. But, you know, it's not even the 29 knots that was a problem, to be honest. Like, I'm okay landing in that. It was that I could see there was a whole bunch of people I was going to have to get in between them to be able to land in these challenging conditions. And that's something to consider as well. It's not you versus the wind, it's you versus 17 other people and the wind and a small landing area potentially. So yeah.
And I think it's so great to see a load organizer making that decision from the aircraft.
Yeah,
because
I wasn't actually LOing at that event. If I was LOing, my whole group would have stayed in. I wouldn't have let any of them get out, but I was actually just participating at that one. So I gave my opinion.
Yeah, because it's hard even as an LO to say, oh, we're not getting out. You know, the whole group should stay in, but that's what we need. You know, we don't we need people making hard decisions like that, even if it means your group has got to stay in the aircraft and you're going to be unpopular LO for the next half hour.
Yeah, you definitely feel. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of pressure when you're LOing. Sometimes you need to jump in things that potentially you wouldn't always, because you're sort of hired and there to do your job. So people on the drop zone making the call, like if all the participants don't want to jump because the weather's bad, then you don't have to sort of fight against that battle. But if everyone's like, oh, well, the LO is going to jump, so I'm going to jump, that's sort of a fallacy, because sometimes they're jumping because you are jumping.
Yeah.
Hey, Jill, do you want to talk about what else happens at boogies, like, you know, the partying side of things and decision making?
Yes. Okay. I don't know if we want this part recorded. So, I mean, yeah, like a lot of...
I'll knock it off.
Yeah.
You can speak freely.
Yeah, there's a lot of partying and drinking and whatnot that goes on at boogies. The same with the jumping. It's all about risk mitigation. Don't be doing something for the first time at a boogie with a whole bunch of people you don't know. And if you are going to be doing that, don't be turning up to jump the next day. That's not cool. The decision-making faculties of your brain are affected by alcohol, and most importantly, lack of sleep. And that has a bigger impact than being drunk. They've done tests on pilots, and they've put them in there hungover and under the influence and tired. And being hungover is obviously quite bad, but being tired, it diminished their capacity to about 70%, whereas when they were drunk, it was only diminished to 80%. That is not an advocate for jumping when you're drunk, but just and the impact that it's having. If you want to have a party night and write yourself off, go for it, but don't jump the next day, and don't think, oh, a jump will clear my head. It might clear your head, but you still shouldn't do that. So yeah, it's again, with that, make your own decisions. I would, if you're planning on having like big nights drinking and stuff, plan them out. you know, do it on the last night when there's no jumping the next day, or you can do Met Roulette and do it on a day when you think there's going to be bad weather the next day. But yeah, if the weather turns out to be good, stick with the choice that you made. So yeah, I mean, it's getting together all of your friends that you haven't seen in ages. It's doing something super fun and exciting. So the temptation to just go full in on everything is really, really high. And yeah, it's about sometimes making a decision like a grown up to do something that maybe isn't just all of the fun all of the time, so that you can keep having fun for the next few days.
Yeah.
Nothing
I think
worse than there thinking, oh fuck, I wish I wasn't here.
For sure. And I think that, you know, it applies to party nights where you're going to be jumping the following day. But I think a similar concept is just looking after yourself throughout the day of skydiving. You know, sometimes we're out there for 12 hours, you know, jumping, equipment safety aside, just keeping yourself sustained, hydrated, and fueled with enough food. I see a lot of skydivers showing up without any breakfast, because they don't eat breakfast, and they go all the way through until 3 p.m. or something before eating, and not looking properly at hydration. And not being hydrated and not having enough fuel on board significantly impacts your decision-making process and your ability to think quickly and on the spot. So we all have a responsibility to, especially when we're at events and other people, there's a lot of other people around, to look after ourselves in terms of having stuff with you. And that's another thing about going to an event. They might not have a shop or a cafe at the drop zone. Find out these things so that you can show up with enough snacks to see you through the day. You know, I've done it plenty of times. I've shown up and then I'm caught short and I'm starving. And then I'm either grumpy or just, you know, and then I'll ultimately miss skydives because I'll have to eventually stop. Or some people have more push through and they keep going. I did in my 20s maybe. And yeah, so I think it's so important to bring what you need to the drop zone, or find out if there's going to be resources there for you to use.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Definitely, if you're jumping like in a European summer where the sun doesn't go down either, knowing what you can have access to, and also knowing your equipment. So knowing that the Cypress is going to automatically turn off after 12 hours and the ditters and whatnot when they go on and off. Yeah, with our LTs, like knowing when you need to charge them and things like that. Yeah, making sure that you understand sort of how the day is going to plan out. So then if there is something like a weather hold or whatnot, you're understanding then how that's going to impact like the rest of the day. It's not like that you have to plan everything out and have a schedule and whatnot. But yeah, if you need access to certain things to be able to function at a higher level, then definitely. Like I have particular snacks and things like that I take with me everywhere, that I know if I have, you know, this every 2 hours for 4 days, I'll be okay. But if I have to do this 5 days in a row and don't have an apple, I'm going to fall over. So yeah, definitely the hydration is key as well. And if you've got an LO who's doing back-to-backs with all different groups and whatnot, like maybe give them a sandwich or say, hey, do you need to go and pee?
And look after your packers in the same way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and definitely like having options available. Basically, you want to be prepared so that you can stick with the group as much as possible. You're not having to go into town and get food and then missing a briefing for a load or missing the load. Yeah, know that if it's going to be cold, you can wear this. If it's going to be hot, you can wear this. If you're going to wingsuit, you can do this. If you're going to free flow, you can do that, and have all of your options readily available to you so that you can sort of stay in the boogie. Like you don't want to be constantly leaving the event to go and get things or go and do this or go and do that. It's helpful to stay there so that you aren't missing things that are happening as it's unfolding, but also because that's fun. Everyone's there. So yeah, making sure that you can have snacks and things like that. As Sue said, finding out, can you drink the water at the drop zone? I know in New Zealand that's not going to be a problem, but in some places you can't drink the water. So finding out things like that and making sure that you're prepared is helpful. Again, with all of your gear, making sure everything's charged, your SD card's clean, all of that sort of stuff. You know, you've made sure your reserve is packed, your monthly maintenance is done, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's just about limiting the factors that could contribute to not even anything going wrong, but you being distracted thinking about it. It's like, okay, I know I didn't leave the iron on because I have this thing at check-in that I didn't leave it on. You know, it's about knowing that you packed properly, you know, the last time that you packed, knowing that you've done X, Y, Z, whatever's going to play on your mind and have you be distracted by those sort of thoughts. Do what you can to mitigate that distraction.
That's good advice there. So we just have a few minutes left with Jill. Does anybody else have any questions they might like to ask about going to events or anything else?
I mean, you can go to boogies with ideas of what you want to do. Like if you have a cool jump that you want to do with some mates, like get those mates together, approach an LO and say, hey, this is what we'd love to do. Can we do 3 jumps over however many days and try and do this? You know, if you have particular things that you want to get out of it, you can go into it with that idea and sort of, in some cases, pre-organize a group. You know, if you guys travel around a lot to boogies, you might have friends that you always meet up with at boogies and things like that. So it's super fun.
It is super fun, and I think it's really great that you've kind of talked about the difference between a boogie and a skills camp, for example, because I think that let's say newer skydivers in New Zealand might still just not quite get the difference between the two, and I think that there's more and more boogies coming in New Zealand, and I think a lot of people turn up to a boogie with the expectation that it's going to be a skills camp, and it's good to know the difference. And you know, for me, going to a boogie is about doing the skydives that I'm already comfortable with. It's not really an opportunity for me to work on my backflying skills in a new group, for example, at a boogie. In my head, at least, I'm looking to jump with a bunch of different people rather than stick with one group all day, which I generally tend to do at a skills camp, or that's encouraged, and to have fun, you know, and to be inclusive, because however experienced you are in the drop zone, there's always lesser experienced people that are trying to get on jumps with you. So to remember that it's not always about getting on jumps with the people who you want to be on, but to share yourself around with some of the other people at a boogie. And that's different, of course, to a skills camp, which in my head is you go to specifically improve your own skills and to work with a coach, whether it's in a group or one-on-one or whatever. Yeah, so I think it's good to note the difference between the two.
Yeah. And definitely like the time that the coaches can take to brief and debrief and explain things is the big difference. If you're LOing out a boogie, the expectation is volume of jumps with volume of people. Whereas at a skills camp, you've got more time to sort of discuss things. So, you know, if it turns out that it's very small and you have a lot of time and people are interested in skill building, then you can do that too. But yeah, like the funnest, honestly, for lower jump number people, skills don't matter. It's who you get along with and who you mates with. And the funnest jumps are with your friends. It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're doing something crazy or something super simple. The funnest thing is jumping with your mates, people that you get along with, people that you have a laugh with. So don't be like always looking for the group that's a level above. Look for who you get along with and who you like and who in 15, 16 years you're going to want to have a beer with, and do the jumps with them, because that's what you're going to remember, and that is the most fun. So yeah, it's that like constant searching to level up. I mean, yeah.
It's a mugs game, because you'll be disappointed ultimately, you know, because you get weathered out or whatever. Because I've played that game myself and chasing free fly skills hard out, and it's difficult from New Zealand. And I went to a few events in a row where and these were boogies, and my goal was progression and getting on these groups. And I actually got really disheartened when we had no weather, rather than just hanging out with my friends and having a good time like you should be doing at a boogie. So I think that was a really good point.
Yeah, the jump is 60 seconds at a time, right? So, I mean, it's such a small part. Be enjoying everything you're doing. Be jumping with a group of people who you want to sit with and chat for the hour in between the loads. And, you know, people who are of high experience and say they want to jump with you, believe them. It's because of your personality. Like, you know, everyone can be having fun and learning and doing stuff on a jump. It's not about having to achieve XYZ goal for a lot of people if they've been jumping for a while. it is honestly so much fun to get out and see someone grinning and having a good time. And that is way better than any technical, you know, sort of jump achievement, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think another thing from an organizer's perspective about boogies, and it's something that I see quite a bit in New Zealand, is, oh, we're running Good Vibes boogie, let's say, and this is what's going to happen. And then somebody gets hold of the organizers and is like, oh, can we do a New Zealand record, a 20-way speed star at Good Vibes, you know? And so this happens quite a lot, actually. In fact, every boogie I've been to in New Zealand in the last year, there's been some kind of an event within an event. I guess from an outside perspective, it seems like an easy thing to do because everybody will be at the drop zone, you know. But just remember that, you know, the organizers have a bit of a vision, you know, for their event, and they have a bunch of coaches there taking people through the things that they've organized. And then if you come petitioning, wanting to do a record at their event, it takes away the aircraft, it can take away coaches, and it really takes away people from the general ethos of a boogie, which is go and have fun with your friends. If you get taken away for 2 days because you're trying to do the ladies sequential record, or you're trying to do the next big star, speed star record. So people who are attending boogies, try to keep that in mind. That, you know, if you want to do a record jump or something amazing, that's really cool, but maybe you should consider doing it on a weekend that there isn't a boogie already organized. You know, it depends on what it is, and sometimes people's ideas do dovetail with the event that's been planned, but oftentimes it's just adding a huge amount of burden to the organizers to even consider it. And everybody wants to accommodate you, you know, nobody wants to be turning down skydivers if they've got a dream to achieve something, but do try to think that organizing events within events it can really complicate it from the organization's perspective.
Yeah, boogies are like a utilitarian thing, most fun for most people. So
yeah.
Yeah, have fun at boogies, guys. I mean, they're absolutely amazing. Some of the best times of my life have been jumping at boogies, LOing and participating, and, you know, like meeting some of the people. Like Jules and I met years and years ago at some boogies and did some really silly fun skits and stuff together. And yeah, I mean, they are the funnest things that we've done. So it definitely, and you know, Jules and I don't do the same type of flying, but you know, we can come together for some silliness. And so it is about who you like and who you get along with, and just playing with your mates. It doesn't need to be about being on that jump to make the day tape. As I said before, if you really want to make the day tape, you can totally make it happen. So
awesome. Okay, well, Jill, thank you so much again for being with us. Really appreciate you contributing your knowledge and being with us today. And yay, come on, borders, open up so that we can all have some fun again together.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Nice to see everyone.
Fantastic. Okay, guys.